in a time when even the simplest of stars sparked both fear and curiosity. Alex knew only one truth: the world was not as simple as he once believed. A typical college student by day, Alex would have never considered himself extraordinary. He preferred to lose himself in the comfort of dusty library stacks, spend hours under the bright, flickering screens of his computer lab, or work part-time at a bookshop filled with customers as ordinary as himself. But all of that changed when he stumbled upon the ring. It had come to him as quietly as a whisper, passed from his late grandmother, with barely an explanation beyond the cryptic words: "This belongs to you now. Protect it, and it will protect you." He hadn't thought much of it at the time. A ring was just a ring, after all. It was small and unassuming, with a strange silvery gleam and intricate etchings that glinted under the light. The surface was cool to the touch, yet somehow alive, humming with an energy Alex couldn't explain. But the true mystery of the ring went far beyond its metallic surface. The first time he wore it, he felt an odd twinge run through his fingers. It was as if the ring had tightened around him, clasping his hand with an invisible force. Then he noticed the sensation spread up. His arm, a faint buzzing. That sent a chill down his spine. That's when the strange occurrences began. At first, it was small things. Books he'd left across the room found their way into his hands without him moving. People's thoughts seemed to flit into his mind as easily as pages turning in a book. But the strangest feeling of all was the sense of someone else's memories flooding. His own memories that were not his own, but somehow felt deeply familiar. Days passed, and Alex grew more fascinated and simultaneously more frightened. The line between reality and something deeper, something otherworldly, began to blur. Alex started questioning if this was a blessing or a curse. The ring had a life of its own, and it spoke to him in whispers that no one else could hear. One evening, he decided to experiment. Alone in his dimly lit dorm room, he held out his hand and focused on an empty coffee mug across the room. He pictured it in his mind, seeing every scratch, every stain on its porcelain surface. Slowly, as if pulled by invisible strings, the mug began to rise. It floated toward him, stopping just within arm's reach. A small thrill sparked in his chest as he touched it, his heart racing with a strange, giddy fear. He could move objects without touching them. His mind buzzed with excitement, and he laughed softly to himself in disbelief. But the thrill was fleeting. With each use, the ring seemed to draw him in further, almost as if it were alive, pulling him into a shadowy world, where he could see and hear beyond the limits of his own senses. He could feel a growing power, a storm brewing inside of him. Yet he couldn't shake the nagging sense that something or someone was watching. Then came the nightmares. Every night, he dreamt of skies streaked with colors he'd never seen before, of strange, towering figures with faces obscured by shadows, watching him with eyes that glowed like fire. A voice echoed in the darkness, whispering warnings he couldn't fully grasp, hints of a destiny greater than he could imagine, but terrifying all the same. And always, that silvery ring glimmered in the shadows, drawing him closer to the abyss. One night, Alex's world was upended entirely. He woke to the sounds of whispers outside his window, louder than any he'd ever heard. The sky was a deep indigo, but streaked with strange flashes of light. The lights weren't stars. He realized they were moving, like bolts of fire. He threw open his window and stared, transfixed, as the sky erupted with shimmering streams of light. They moved closer, forming patterns, twisting and spiraling until he could make out shapes, forms with wings, a fleet of massive, golden eagles gliding through the night. On the backs of these majestic eagles sat figures alien, majestic beings with skin as blue as twilight and hair that shimmered like polished silver. They were unlike anything Alex had ever seen. The figures radiated an aura of power and grace, their armor reflecting the moonlight in brilliant flashes. The sight filled him with awe and dread. He felt drawn to these beings, yet knew instinctively that they were a force far beyond his understanding. His fingers tightened around the ring, which now pulsed with a light all its own. A name flitted through his mind, unbidden but certain: the Eagle Empire. Then, one of the Eagle Riders caught sight of him. Her piercing gaze, golden and intense, locked onto him with frightening precision. It was as though she could see past his very thoughts, down to the core of his being. She raised a slender hand, and a bolt of blue light shot from her fingertips, illuminating his entire room in a blinding flash. In an instant, Alex found himself surrounded. 3 alien figures hovered outside his window, their expressions unreadable, but their eyes unmistakably hostile. They spoke in a language that was foreign yet hauntingly familiar, their voices low and cold, yet somehow he understood them. "The ring," one of them murmured, her voice an ethereal blend of tones. "He has the ring. The Queen will be pleased." Suddenly, a chilling realization struck him. They weren't here for the stars, nor were they here for the sky. They had come for him and the ring. Without another thought, he bolted out of his room, darting down the narrow halls of his dormitory. His heart pounded as he sprinted past rooms and students, oblivious to the danger trailing just behind him. He turned corners, ducked down staircases, and slid into the shadows, but there was no escaping them. A piercing shriek echoed through the hall as the figures descended upon him. A pair of gloved hands seized his arms, cold and unyielding. Alex struggled, but the grip was like iron. He was lifted into the air, and his vision swirled with flashes of light and shadow. Then everything went black. Alex's journey had only just begun, and as he drifted into unconsciousness, he felt the ring pulse against his skin, whispering promises of power, destiny, and perhaps doom. When he awoke, he would be far from home, in the depths of space, where his fate awaited him at the hands of the Eagle Empire's queen. A groggy haze clouded Alex's mind as he drifted back into consciousness. His surroundings felt wrong, eerily silent, cold, and sterile. Blinking slowly, he struggled to gather his bearings, his head throbbing as he opened his eyes to a place he'd never seen before. The ceiling above him was high and arched, made of a silvery material that gleamed with a strange, unearthly light. Around him, the air felt thin, and there was an antiseptic chill in the room, far removed from his familiar dorm room back on Earth. He tried to sit up, but his wrists were bound by cuffs that glowed faintly, pulsing with a rhythmic, mechanical hum. Panic spiked in his chest as he tugged against the restraints. But the harder he pulled, the tighter they seemed to clamp around him, sensing his resistance. A metallic clinking echoed in the room as he gave one last, futile attempt to free himself. "You're awake." The voice was cold, measured, and laced with something ancient. It resonated through the cavernous room, both calm and menacing. Alex looked up to see a figure glide toward him. She was unlike anyone he'd ever seen, a woman with flawless blue skin that shimmered as if dusted with stardust. Her eyes, an otherworldly silver, bore into him with a piercing intelligence that felt like it could strip away his very thoughts. She wore a shimmering robe of dark fabric that flowed like liquid, with accents of polished metal that glowed faintly in the dim light. Her silver hair cascaded down her shoulders, framing her face in an ethereal halo. This was no ordinary being. This was someone who commanded authority, who radiated power with an effortless grace that sent chills through Alex. He somehow knew this was Queen Azura, ruler of the Eagle Empire, the one who had come for him. Azura studied him, her eyes narrowing slightly, as if she were inspecting a specimen under a microscope. "I can sense it even now," she murmured, more to herself than to him. "The power of the ring. I've never felt anything quite like it." Alex's gaze hardened as he met her stare. He had no idea where he was or what this woman intended to do with him, but he could sense the danger radiating from her in waves. He struggled to sound braver than he felt. "I don't know what you want with me, but you're not getting anything." The queen raised an eyebrow, amused. "Oh, Alex," she purred, his name sounding strange and foreign on her tongue. "You have no idea what kind of power you're wielding. That ring on your hand, it is not just a trinket. It is an artifact older than your world, a weapon forged by the stars themselves." She paused, studying him again, as if trying to gauge his comprehension. "For centuries, our empire has searched for the ring. Its power can unlock abilities that mortal minds cannot even begin to fathom. The ability to conquer and control, to shape reality itself. Alex's fingers instinctively curled around the ring, which seemed to pulse faintly at her words. He felt its power surge through him, but this time it didn't feel comforting. It felt hungry, restless. "This ring is a part of my family," he said defiantly. "It's not a weapon, and if you think you can use me to do your bidding, you're wrong." Azura chuckled, a low, icy sound that reverberated through the room. "You're in no position to make demands." "Alex," she replied, her tone dripping with condescension, "and whether you cooperate or not, that ring will be mine." Without warning, the doors to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Two guards stepped forward, tall, muscular aliens with the same blue skin as Azura, though their eyes glowed a steely gray. They wore armor adorned with the emblem of a golden eagle, which shimmered with a strange energy. Flanking them were two massive golden eagles, towering above Alex, their metallic feathers clinking as they moved. The birds' eyes were a fierce, predatory gold, and their beaks curved sharply, a deadly reminder of their role in the Eagle Empire's war machine. Azura gestured, and the guards yanked Alex to his feet, their grips unyielding. As they forced him forward, he caught sight of the vast corridor that stretched out before him. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, walls that seemed to ripple with light, machinery humming with unseen energy, and windows that revealed the endless black void of space. Stars dotted the darkness, and in the distance, planets and moons drifted, indifferent to the events unfolding within the fortress. He was marched through a series of grand halls, each more intimidating than the last, filled with alien soldiers and officials who watched him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. Some whispered among themselves, eyeing him with barely hidden interest. He felt like a caged animal, surrounded by beings who saw him as nothing more than a tool, a means to an end. Eventually, they arrived in a massive throne-like chamber. The walls were lined with shimmering panels that displayed maps of galaxies and star systems, dotted with countless planets. In the center of the room stood a raised platform, and atop it sat a high, ornately crafted chair made of an obsidian-like material, etched with swirling patterns that seemed to glow with an inner light. Azura ascended the platform, her gaze fixed on Alex as he was forced to kneel before her. She looked down at him with a mixture of triumph and greed, and for a moment, Alex could see her intentions laid bare. "Now," she said, her voice taking on a menacing edge, "the ring will activate an ancient weapon, a device powerful enough to bring every star in the universe under my command. With it, I will finally be able to complete my vision, a universe united under the rule of the Eagle Empire." Alex's blood ran cold. The enormity of her ambition was staggering. She was not merely seeking to control him or his ring, she wanted dominion over the very fabric of the universe. "You're insane," he spat, struggling against his restraints. "You can't control everything. Even if you get the ring's power, you won't be able to handle it. It's too much." Azura smirked, unimpressed by his defiance. "Power requires sacrifice, Alex, something your mortal mind could never comprehend. I will do whatever it takes to achieve my destiny, and if I must destroy entire worlds to do so, so be it." As she spoke, Alex felt a presence behind him. He turned slightly, catching sight of a figure who seemed out of place among the hardened soldiers and officials. She was younger, with softer features and a curiosity in her gaze that reminded him briefly of himself. Her blue skin was a shade lighter, her silver hair braided and adorned with small, delicate ornaments that shimmered faintly. Azura's voice cut through his thoughts. "This is my daughter, Princess Luna," she announced. gesturing toward the girl with a wave of her hand. She is next in line to rule after me. Perhaps she will learn a lesson from watching her mother's triumph. But Luna didn't look triumphant. Her gaze lingered on Alex, filled with a complex blend of empathy, sorrow, and intrigue. When their eyes met, something flickered between them, a silent understanding, a recognition of shared humanity, despite their vast differences. Suddenly, the doors to the chamber burst open, and an alarm blared through the fortress, echoing in deep, resonant tones. Azura's expression shifted to one of frustration as she looked toward her guards. "What is it now?" she snapped, her voice sharp. One of the guards stepped forward. "Your Majesty, there's been a disturbance in the Western Wing. We suspect it may be the work of rebels." Azura's eyes narrowed. "So, they've come to interfere, have they?" She turned back to Alex, her gaze calculating. "It seems he'll be staying with us for longer than anticipated." The guards pulled Alex to his feet once more, leading him out of the throne room. As he was escorted away, he managed one last glance at Princess Luna. She was watching him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. It was as though she were silently promising something, a warning or a vow. And in that moment, Alex knew that his fight was far from over. The Queen's fortress was vast, filled with secrets, and somewhere within its cold, star-lit corridors, he sensed an ally. But he also knew that whatever lay ahead, it would test him to his very limits and beyond. The fortress trembled as the warning alarms blared through its metallic corridors. The air was charged with tension, thick and oppressive, as if every wall and corner knew the stakes of the impending battle. Alex's heart pounded in his chest as he sprinted through the dimly lit halls, his mind racing as he tried to piece together the plan Luna had outlined moments before. They had found a small, hidden room away from prying eyes, where Luna had revealed the truth. Queen Azura's grand ambition was not just to rule the universe, it was to consume it, to wield the ring's power to create an empire without end. The ancient weapon that Azura sought to activate was an artifact, capable of bending entire star systems to her will. And Alex's ring was the only key to unleash it. "Are you sure this will work?" he had whispered to Luna, his hand gripping hers in a silent plea for reassurance. Luna nodded, her gaze resolute. "The ring's power is dangerous, even for her. If we can keep her from fully activating it, she won't be able to control it. But we have to act quickly." Now, as they moved through the fortress, Alex could feel the ring's pulse against his skin, stronger and fiercer than ever before. The power was almost intoxicating, whispering promises of strength and invincibility, urging him to unleash it fully. He fought the pull, knowing that if he let it take over, he might lose himself entirely. They reached a wide chamber, bathed in a cold blue light. Luna placed a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. "This is it," she murmured, glancing around. "My mother will be here soon. She'll sense the ring's energy." As if on cue, the massive double doors on the far side of the chamber swung open, revealing Queen Azura flanked by her guards. Her silver eyes were blazing, and a cruel smile tugged at her lips as she strode toward them, her steps slow and confident. "So, you think you can outsmart me?" Azura's voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with contempt. "You disappoint me. Luna, I thought I'd raised you better than to side with a pathetic human." Luna stood her ground, her chin lifted defiantly. "Mother, you're blinded by your ambition. You don't see the cost of your plans, the destruction, the lives you'll destroy. The universe doesn't need a tyrant." Azura's gaze hardened, and she raised a hand. "Enough," she snapped, her voice laced with fury. "You are a child, Luna. You cannot comprehend the power at my command." The Queen's gaze shifted to Alex, and her eyes gleamed with hunger. "And you, mortal," she sneered. "You think you're strong because of that ring? You're nothing but a pawn in a game far beyond your understanding." Alex clenched his fists, the ring's energy surging through him in response to her challenge. He could feel its heat radiating from his hand, a reminder of the power he held. "I may be just a mortal," he shot back, his voice steady, "but I won't let you destroy everything for your twisted vision." Azura laughed, a harsh, chilling sound that echoed through the chamber. Bold words for someone who can't even control his own power. With a flick of her wrist, Azura summoned her warriors. They stepped forward, brandishing weapons that shimmered with a strange, dark energy. The guards surrounded Alex and Luna, forming a circle that tightened with each passing second. The tension was palpable, each side waiting for the first move. Suddenly, Azura raised her hand, her eyes fixed on Alex. "If you won't give me the ring willingly," she hissed, "I'll tear it from your body." The guards lunged, their weapons glinting in the dim light. Alex barely had time to react, raising his hand instinctively as the ring's energy erupted in a blinding flash. The force threw the guards back, sending them sprawling across the chamber floor. But Alex could feel the toll it took on him. The power was immense, overwhelming, and he knew he couldn't rely on it alone. Luna darted to his side, her face pale but determined. "We have to disable the weapon's core," she whispered urgently. "If we can disrupt its energy source, she won't be able to harness the ring's full power." Together, they moved toward the far side of the chamber, where a series of intricate mechanisms hummed with a low, menacing vibration. The core was a massive, crystalline structure, pulsing with a dark energy that seemed to suck the light from the room. Azura's gaze followed them, her lips curling into a vicious smile. "You can't escape me, Alex," she called, her voice taunting. With a flick of her fingers, she summoned a wave of energy that shot across the room, slamming into Alex's chest and sending him sprawling. Dazed, he struggled to his feet, clutching his chest as the pain throbbed through him. He could feel the ring's energy stirring within him, urging him to fight back, to unleash its full potential. But he hesitated, knowing the cost. If he lost control, there would be no stopping the power's destructive force. Luna knelt beside him, her hand on his arm. "You can do this," she whispered, her eyes filled with fierce determination. "You have to." Drawing a shaky breath, Alex focused, letting the ring's energy flow through him, controlled and measured. He could feel the power building, a steady pulse that echoed with each beat of his heart. Raising his hand, he sent a beam of energy toward the core, the force slamming into it with a resounding crack. The crystal structure shuddered, its light flickering as cracks began to spider across its surface. Azura's scream of rage filled the chamber as she realized what they were doing. "Stop!" she shrieked, her voice a furious echo that rattled the very walls. She raised her hands, summoning a surge of dark energy that filled the room, casting an eerie shadow over everything. Luna stepped in front of Alex, her arms raised protectively. "Mother, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "This isn't the way." But Azura's expression was one of pure, unrelenting fury. "You've betrayed me, Luna," she hissed, her eyes blazing. "You've chosen a mortal over your own blood. You are no daughter of mine." With a wave of her hand, she sent a blast of energy at Luna, who staggered back, her face etched with pain. Alex caught her as she stumbled, his heart pounding as he looked into her eyes, filled with determination despite the hurt. "I'll protect you," he whispered, tightening his grip on her hand. Together, they focused their energy on the core, their combined powers amplifying each other. The crystal shuddered, glowing brighter and brighter as it approached its breaking point. Azura's face twisted with desperation, and she lunged forward, summoning a final surge of power. In a last desperate move, she sent a wave of dark energy toward them, determined to stop them at any cost. But Alex and Luna stood their ground, their combined strength forming a shield that deflected the blast. The core began to crack, its light pulsating wildly as it reached critical mass. Realizing she was out of options, Azura's expression turned to one of horror. "No," she screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber as the core shattered in a blinding explosion of light and energy. The force of the blast sent Alex and Luna tumbling, their bodies thrown across the room. Alex felt himself slipping into unconsciousness, his vision fading as the last remnants of the ring's power surged through him, desperate and uncontrolled. But before darkness claimed him, he felt Luna's hand in his, her grip warm and reassuring. When he opened his eyes, the room was quiet, the air thick with the scent of scorched metal. The core was destroyed, its shards scattered across the floor, glinting in the dim light. Queen Azura lay motionless, her body surrounded by the remnants of the shattered crystal. But as Alex and Luna watched, a strange light began to glow around her, her form twisting and changing as she merged with the energy of the ring. Azura's body transformed, her skin taking on a shimmering, ethereal quality as she rose, her eyes filled with a new, terrible power. She was no longer merely a queen. She had become something else entirely, a cosmic being, bound to the ring's energy, neither fully alive nor dead. Alex struggled to his feet, his gaze fixed on the figure before him. Azura, he whispered, realizing the magnitude of what they had unleashed. But there was no recognition in her eyes, only a vast, consuming emptiness. She looked at them, her gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the confines of the fortress, beyond the stars themselves. Without a word, she turned and vanished, her form dissolving into stardust as she drifted into the void of space. Alex and Luna stood in the silence, the weight of what they had done settling over them like a shroud. The battle was over, but the universe would never be the same. In the vast silence of the universe, where stars flickered like candles against an endless night, Luna clutched the fractured remains of the ring, its once brilliant gleam now dull and lifeless. Her heart raced, her hands trembling as she held the ring piece, realizing that Alex's final, desperate act had saved her and the galaxy. But the cost of his sacrifice loomed over her, like a shadow cast across the stars. Around them, the fortress was crumbling. Its walls, once solid and unyielding, had splintered under the strain of Azura's transformation. Shards of crystal and fragments of metal floated in zero gravity, suspended in the air, glowing faintly as if honoring the memory of the battle they had just survived. A chilling silence filled the space where once there had been so much struggle. But Alex's presence, his warmth and courage, were gone, replaced by an aching emptiness that Luna couldn't bear. "Ah, Alex," she whispered, her voice barely audible as she scanned the area, hoping to see him standing there, just as he had always been, brave, determined, unwavering. But all that remained were faint particles glinting like stars in the dim light, floating where he had once stood. Luna's eyes brimmed with tears as the weight of the reality hit her. He had given everything, his power, his life, to protect her, to stop Azura's ambitions, and to save the universe from the terror she had nearly unleashed. She reached out, letting her fingers pass through the sparkling dust. In this final act, Alex had become a part of the cosmos, a part of every star that shone in the night sky. As the fortress continued to collapse around her, Luna felt the pull of gravity weakening, and she knew her time in this floating ruin was limited. She took a steadying breath, her thoughts focusing on Alex's final words to her. "Sometimes you have to lose to win." His words echoed in her mind, bringing a strange, bittersweet comfort. Alex had seen the truth. True power was not in domination or control, but in the sacrifices one made for the greater good. Luna moved through the crumbling structure, each step feeling like a farewell. As she passed a cracked, broken window, she caught a glimpse of the stars, brighter and more beautiful than she had ever seen. It was as if Alex's spirit had been woven into each one, a lasting testament to his bravery and selflessness. In that moment, she made a silent vow she would carry on his legacy, honoring his sacrifice by protecting the galaxy and everything he had fought for. After a few minutes of wandering, Luna finally reached the escape pod bay. The pods, sleek and silver, were lined up in rows, ready for departure. She hesitated, her gaze drifting back toward the heart of the fortress where Alex had fallen. She felt a pang of sorrow, a sense of incompleteness, as if leaving this place meant truly saying goodbye. Clutching the half ring around her neck, Luna whispered a final goodbye. "I'll keep your memory alive, Alex, I promise." With a heavy heart, she climbed into the escape pod, and set the coordinates for a nearby star system. As the pod launched, she watched the fortress shrink into the distance, a silhouette against the stars, until it was finally gone, leaving only darkness behind. Days passed as Luna drifted through space, the silence of the pod amplifying her thoughts. Her memories of Alex became her constant companion, the warmth of his smile, his courage in the face of danger, the way he had trusted her even when her loyalty was torn. Each memory brought both solace and pain, but she clung to them, refusing to let go of the person who had changed her life so profoundly. She returned to her people, the members of the Eagle Empire who had been under her mother's rule. When they heard of Queen Azura's fall, many of them felt relief, others confusion. Some were uncertain about their future, unsure of what Luna's leadership would mean for them. But Luna, carrying the memory of Alex's sacrifice, approached them with a new resolve. In the grand hall of her palace, Luna addressed her people, her voice steady and her gaze resolute. The age of conquest has ended. We were once feared, but fear has only brought us ruin. From this day forward, we will use our power to protect, to honor the sacrifice made by someone who showed us the value of life beyond power. There was silence in the hall as her words sank in. Many of the warriors, once loyal to her mother, looked at her with expressions of surprise and respect. They could see the change in her, the determination in her eyes, the unbreakable spirit that Alex had left within her. Luna knew that change would not come easily, that there would be resistance from those who still held onto Azura's vision. But she was prepared to face it. Over time, Luna's rule transformed the Eagle Empire. She honored Alex's memory by dedicating herself to peace, forming alliances with neighboring systems, and providing aid to worlds affected by her mother's conquests. Under her guidance, the Empire became a force for good, a protector of the weak, a guardian of peace in a galaxy that had once feared its very name. Yet, even as she built this new future, Luna could never forget the half-ring around her neck, the constant reminder of Alex's final act. She often found herself gazing at the stars, searching for the faint glow that she believed held his spirit. On clear nights, she would stand on her balcony, feeling the vastness of space stretch before her, and she would close her eyes, letting his presence wash over her, as if he were standing beside her once more. Years passed, and Luna's legend grew. Tales of her kindness, her wisdom, and her strength spread across the galaxy. The story of Alex, the mortal who had sacrificed everything to save the universe, became a myth whispered in starships and settlements, inspiring countless others to stand up against tyranny and to value life and freedom. One night, as Luna stood beneath the endless expanse of stars, she felt a strange sensation, a warmth, faint but unmistakable, coming from the half-ring around her neck. She looked down, her breath catching as she saw a soft glow emanating from the broken piece, as if Alex's spirit were reaching out to her from beyond. With a trembling hand, she touched the ring, feeling a surge of emotions rise within her. It was as if Alex were there, speaking to her through the ring, reminding her of his final words. Sometimes you have to lose to win. The glow intensified, and Luna felt a surge of hope and determination, a reminder that Alex's legacy would live on, not only through her actions but through every life touched by his sacrifice. She looked up at the stars, a small smile on her lips as she felt his presence, not in a distant memory, but in the very fabric of the universe itself. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, as if celebrating the legacy of a hero who had given everything for a galaxy he barely knew. And as Luna watched them, she felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that Alex's spirit would forever be a part of the universe, a light that would guide her and countless others toward a brighter future. In the end, Alex's sacrifice became more than just a moment of bravery. It became a symbol, a beacon of hope that echoed across the galaxy, reminding all who heard the tale that even the smallest acts of courage could change the course of history. And so, with the half-ring resting against her heart, Luna continued her journey, carrying forward the legacy of the man who had taught her that sometimes the greatest victories come from the deepest sacrifices. She ruled with compassion, wisdom, and strength, forever guided by the whisper of Alex's final words. etched into her soul like the stars themselves. Sometimes you have to lose to win.